The sun was setting over Maplewood, a quiet American town where everyone seemed to know everyone, or at least they liked to think so. The streets glowed orange under the fading light, the kind of evening that should have felt peaceful. But for Malik Turner, it was just another reminder that peace wasn't always made for him. At 17, Malik had a gift. He could take a blank page and make it breathe. Give him a pencil, and he'd bring anything to life: a face, a dream, a story. He didn't talk much, but his sketchbook spoke for him. It was old and worn, covered in paint stains and smudged fingerprints. Inside, each page was a world of its own. That evening, Malik sat on a park bench across from the Maplewood Police Department. The building was tall, brick, and serious looking, the kind of place that made people walk a little faster as they passed. Malik didn't notice the stairs. His world had narrowed down to the paper in front of him. His pencil moved quickly, tracing lines and shadows with quiet confidence. He was drawing the police building pump, but not as it was. He saw it differently. He imagined it surrounded by sunlight, flags waving proudly, people smiling outside. And right in the center, a tall black man in uniform, strong, kind, respected. Malik didn't know that man's name. He'd just seen his picture once, on a news article about a police chief from another city who fought for equality. Malik wanted to capture that energy. A few people passed by and looked over his shoulder. Some smiled, impressed by the detail. But then came the sound that made his stomach twist. The sharp tone of a police radio. Two officers were walking up the sidewalk toward him. They weren't smiling. "Hey!" one of them called out. "What are you doing there, kid?" Malik looked up, startled. "Just drawing, sir." "Drawing, huh?" The older officer, Sergeant Miller, squinted. "You got some kind of permit for that?" Malik frowned slightly. "Permit? I'm just sketching." The younger cop, Officer Dean, laughed. "You hear that, Miller? He's sketching the police station. That's suspicious as hell." "It's just art," Malik said quietly, gripping his sketchbook. Miller folded his arms. "Yeah? Well, around here, we don't take kindly to people hanging around government buildings, taking pictures or drawings." People nearby started to slow down, watching. A woman across the street pulled out her phone. Malik felt his cheeks burn. He wanted to explain, to tell them it wasn't what they thought, but every word felt dangerous. Dean leaned closer, smirking. "What's this supposed to be, huh? Planning something?" He snatched the sketchbook from Malik's hands. "Hey!" Malik stood up. "Give that back!" Dean flipped through the pages, expecting to find something incriminating. But all he saw were drawings, beautiful ones. People, faces, streets, sunsets. He stopped on the newest one, the portrait Malik had been working on, the man in the police uniform. Dean frowned. "Who's this supposed to be? You spying on one of our guys?" Malik hesitated. "He's just someone I admire, a chief from another city." Miller chuckled coldly. "Right. And you just happen to be sitting across our station drawing cops." "Sure, kid." They handed his sketchbook back roughly and told him to move along. Malik picked up his bag, heart heavy, humiliation crawling up his spine. As he walked away, the pages of his sketchbook fluttered in the wind. One half-finished drawing staring up from the sidewalk. The light caught the face he had been sketching, and for a brief moment, the image almost seemed alive. What no one knew, not the officers, not Malik, was that the man in the portrait was about to walk into Maplewood for the first time the next morning. And his arrival would change everything. Morning sunlight poured over the town of Maplewood, turning the streets gold. It was the kind of morning that made everything look calm and ordinary, but beneath that calm, something was shifting. Inside the Maplewood Police Department, officers were bustling around more than usual. The reason? A new police chief was arriving that day. The old chief had retired after 30 years, and the town's mayor had promised a fresh perspective, someone who could rebuild trust with the community. But not everyone liked the idea of change. Sergeant Miller stood by the coffee machine, muttering to Officer Dean, "New guys from out of state, big city type. Bet he'll come in here acting like he's gonna save the world." Dean smirked. "Yeah, probably one of those community outreach types. I heard he's some kind of diversity hire." They laughed quietly until the door opened. A tall man in a crisp blue uniform stepped inside. His posture was straight, his face calm but strong. He carried no arrogance, only quiet authority. His skin was deep brown, his eyes sharp, yet kind. His nameplate read, Chief Ellis Carter. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady but warm. "You must be Sergeant Miller." Miller straightened up quickly. "Yes, sir. Welcome to Maplewood, Chief Carter." Dean nodded awkwardly. "Sir." Chief Carter smiled faintly. "No need for nerves. I'm not here to shake things up, unless things need shaking." The room went quiet for a moment. Then he added, "I believe in respect, for the badge, and for the people we serve. Let's start there." He walked through the precinct, shaking hands, meeting officers. But even as he smiled, he noticed things. The stiffness in some greetings, the glances exchanged behind his back. He'd seen it before. Change was never easy, especially in small towns. After his introductions, Carter stepped outside to take a short walk. The air was cool and fresh. Across the street, something caught his eye, a scrap of paper lying on the sidewalk. He bent down and picked it up. It was a sketch. His own face stared back at him. He blinked, stunned. The drawing was unfinished, but the detail was incredible. Sharp lines, deep emotion, every crease and contour of his uniform captured with precision. The artist hadn't just drawn him, they'd understood him. He looked around, but no one was there. On the corner, an old woman watering her flowers called out, "You looking for that artist boy? He was sitting right there last night, drawing you for hours." "Drawing? Me?" Carter asked, surprised. She nodded. "Young black kid. Real polite. Cops gave him a hard time, though. Said he was up to something." Poor boy looked like he wanted to disappear. Chief Carter's jaw tightened. "Do you know his name?" "No, honey, but I've seen him around the park before. Always sketching something beautiful." He folded the drawing carefully and slipped it into his pocket. The pencil marks smudged slightly against his palm, fragile proof of something deeper. As he walked back toward the station, he looked up at the building, the same one the boy had drawn. It seemed colder now. In his first hour as chief, Carter had already seen two things clearly. One, this town didn't know him yet. And two, somewhere out there, a kid who looked like him had already seen something worth believing in. He intended to find that kid. Chief Ellis Carter sat alone in his new office, the faint hum of conversation seeping through the walls of the Maplewood Police Department. On his desk lay the folded sketch he had found that morning. He opened it again, smoothing the creases with careful hands. The lines were light but deliberate, the kind of strokes that came from someone who felt what they were drawing. He studied it in silence. Whoever this young artist was, they hadn't just seen a man in uniform. They'd seen the weight behind it, the responsibility, the hope. It was almost unsettling how much emotion had been captured with just a pencil. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said. Sergeant Miller stepped inside, followed by Officer Dean. Both looked a little nervous, as if summoned to the principal's office. "Morning, Chief," Miller said. "Everything settling in all right?" Carter nodded. "More or less." He gestured for them to sit, but they stayed standing. He looked from one to the other. "Gentlemen, I took a walk this morning. Found something interesting outside our building." He held up the drawing. Dean's face twitched. "That kid again," he muttered before catching himself. Carter's eyes narrowed. "That kid again? You know who made this?" Miller hesitated. "Well, sir, there was a young man sitting outside last night. Black teenager. Said he was drawing. We, checked on him. Just doing our due diligence." "Checked on him how?" Carter asked calmly, but his tone carried a quiet force that filled the room. Dean shifted in place. "Just asked some questions. Told him he couldn't hang around government property after dark. He got mouthy, so we told him to move along." Carter leaned back in his chair, folding the sketch gently. "Did he threaten you?" "No, sir," Miller said quickly. "Nothing like that." "Was he damaging property? Blocking the sidewalk?" "No, sir." "So," Carter said slowly, "you harassed a teenager for sitting in public and drawing." The silence that followed was heavy. Miller's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Carter exhaled through his nose and stood up. "Let me tell you something, officers. You represent the law. But more than that, you represent how people see the law. You make someone feel small for no reason. They'll remember that longer than any good deed you ever do." Dean mumbled something under his breath. He was acting suspicious. Carter turned sharply. Suspicious? For using a pencil? You need to check what suspicion looks like before you use it as an excuse. Miller cleared his throat. With respect, Chief, we were just doing what we thought was right. You're new here. You don't know how folks can be. Carter fixed him with a steady stare. Maybe you're right, Sergeant. I am new here. So let me make one thing clear. The way things were done before doesn't mean that's how they'll stay. He let that hang in the air. Then, quieter, he said, Do either of you know how to contact this boy? Dean shrugged. No idea. Didn't ask for his name. Carter sighed. Then find out. If you see him again, you let me know immediately. The officers exchanged glances, muttered, Yes, sir, and left the office. When the door closed, Carter sat back down and picked up the drawing once more. He turned it over. The boy had written something faintly on the back corner. Respect should be earned, not feared. He smiled sadly. Smart kid, he murmured. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, Carter walked the same path the boy had sat on the night before. The bench was empty now, but a few pencil shavings still glimmered on the concrete like tiny silver slivers in the light. He looked up at the town around him, the quiet stores, the passing cars, the familiar stares. He could feel the tension in the air, the invisible line dividing trust and fear. He'd crossed that line before, many times. And now, he had a reason to cross it again. Somewhere out there, a boy had seen the kind of police chief the town needed him to be, before anyone else had. Chief Carter was determined to find him. The following afternoon, the air in Maplewood felt unusually heavy, the kind of stillness that comes before something important happens. Down by the park, Malik sat beneath a large oak tree with his sketchbook open across his knees. He'd been there for hours, trying to draw but unable to focus. Ever since the encounter with the officers, he couldn't shake the memory, the way their laughter stung, the way his hands shook when they took his drawings. He had replayed it a dozen times in his head, thinking of all the things he wished he'd said but didn't. He wasn't afraid of the police exactly. He was tired of them. Tired of being treated like trouble, when all he wanted was to create something beautiful. He looked down at his half-finished sketch. The same portrait of the man in uniform, the man whose name he still didn't know. His pencil hovered above the page, frozen in indecision. That's when a shadow fell over his work. Mind if I sit? Malik looked up, startled. A tall black man in a police uniform stood before him. His cap was tucked under one arm, and his expression was calm. But there was something firm and powerful in his presence. Sure, Malik said cautiously. The man sat down on the bench beside him. You're quite an artist, he said after a moment. I found one of your drawings this morning, outside the station. Malik's heart dropped. You found that? The man smiled faintly. I did. You captured him well. Malik blinked. Captured who? The man turned to face him fully and said, Me. For a second, Malik couldn't speak. He glanced from the man to the drawing in his lap, then back again. It was him. The same face, the same calm strength in the eyes. I didn't know you were real, Malik stammered. I just saw your photo online once. You were a police chief somewhere else. I thought, I don't know, I wanted to draw what I wish cops were like. Chief Carter nodded slowly. And now I'm the new chief here in Maplewood. Malik's eyes widened. You're the new chief? That's right, Carter said gently. And I heard about what happened last night. Malik looked away, embarrassment creeping into his face. It's fine. I'm used to it. No, Carter said firmly. It's not fine. He paused, letting the words sink in. Those officers disrespected you. They disrespected what you were doing and what it means. I can't undo that, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Malik studied him carefully. He'd never heard a cop talk like that. Not in this town, not anywhere. I don't want trouble, Malik said quietly. I just draw. And I don't want trouble either, Carter replied. I just lead. Maybe we're both trying to change how people see things. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound being the rustle of leaves overhead. Then Carter gestured toward the sketchbook. May I see what you're working on? Malik hesitated, then handed it over. The chief turned the pages slowly, his brow softening with every turn. Portraits of families, street scenes, faces filled with emotion and dignity. You've got something special, Malik, Carter said at last. This town needs to see it. Malik frowned. People here don't really care about art. Then we'll make them care, Carter said with quiet certainty. How about this? You come by the station tomorrow. I want to hang one of your drawings in the front lobby. Malik blinked, stunned. You're serious? Completely. But after what happened? Carter smiled. Especially after what happened. Malik looked down, trying to hide the grin spreading across his face. For the first time in a long while, someone wasn't looking at him like a threat. They were looking at him like he mattered. When Chief Carter stood to leave, he placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. Don't stop drawing, he said. The world needs people who can see it differently. As Carter walked away, Malik sat frozen for a moment, watching the man's silhouette fade into the afternoon light. Then, slowly, he turned the page of his sketchbook and began to draw again. This time, the man who had just changed everything. The man who made him believe that respect, maybe, could go both ways.